Self-regulation is a child's capacity to control their behavior and control their emotions. And if we look at self-regulation at the start of school, it's one of the most important predictors of the child's later success throughout school and throughout life. Now, in research I've been involved with, we've been following children from birth right through to adulthood. And this is true for many thousands of children. And what we found in these studies is what we call self-regulation at the start of school is a long-term predictor of the child's later development. And this is true when one is talking about educational development or social development. Now, what do we mean by self-regulation? Well, what we mean is a child's capacity to control their own behavior. Now, this can take many forms. For example, you can have what we call behavioral self-regulation, where they control their behavior and plan their behavior. Let's take a child who sees an apple and it's on top of a cupboard. Now, the child can't reach the top of the cupboard, but they see there's a table in the room, and they see there's a chair in the room, and they work out, if I move the table over to next to the cupboard, and then I move the chair next to the table, I can climb on the chair onto the table, then reach the apple and get the apple. The planning activities, controlling your behavior in advance to get the desired result. That's part of self-regulation. Another part of self-regulation is what we call emotional self-regulation. Child gets upset. Can they calm down and then start to interact normally with people? Or do they stay in a highly worked up state and take a long, long time to calm down? That's what we call emotional self-regulation, the extent to which they can calm down easily when they're emotionally upset or when they're overexcited. Can they control that excitement and get on with the task at hand? Those are aspects of what we call self-regulation. Now, self-regulation is dependent on the kinds of experiences the child has. And what we find is that the interactions children have with adults, by the parents or early childhood educators, makes a difference. For example, more sustained interactions, what we call sustained shared thinking, where adults and caregivers work together to solve a problem, helps develop this self-regulation ability in the children. Because what the adult is doing is offering the child the extra information to know what the consequences of their action might be, and they can go that extra step. They can link their actions together more easily. And this is part of self-regulation, being able to plan activities and link activities together. Now, this particular capacity shows an enormous developmental spurt, particularly between the ages of 3 and 5, so that if you provide these experiences in that developmental frame, that is between age 3 and age 5, the child's going to particularly benefit from those experiences in terms of getting better self-regulation. And if the child has really good self-regulation by the start of school, you will see that child's educational performance benefit enormously, because self-regulation is very good in a school environment. It's a very good attribute to have. And so we want the child to have good self-regulation. And also, the kinds of social interactions the child gets involved with also become more controlled, more productive, more enjoyable because of the child's capacity for self-regulation. So it has a series of knock-on benefits for the child. And it's these sustained interactions and activities of a particular kind which help the child. Let me give you some examples. You can play the orchestra game. Okay, make the child the lead orchestra, the conductor. Okay, so the other children have to speed up what they're doing when you wave the baton. But then you change the rules. Now, when the conductor waves the baton fast, you go slower. When the conductor goes slow, you go faster. So you reverse the rule, okay? You're learning to control your behavior differently in different situations. That's one example. And you can sometimes make one child the conductor, the other child playing the instrument, and vice versa. And these role-playing games, as happened in Doctors and Nurses, Mothers and Fathers, Teacher and Pupil, all these kinds of role-playing games, Kings and Servants, these involve control of your behavior. Because when you're playing a role, you have to learn to control what you do in that role. And if you play one role, you're in charge of the situation in one role. You have to control your behavior in one way. But then you switch the roles. So the child initially is in control, but then other child's in control, and the child's subservient, as it were, to that child. And then you have to control their behavior in a different way. So those role-playing games are a very good way to learn self-regulation. So there's a range of activities like this which enable the child to control their behavior. Learning a physical skill is another thing. I've seen children learning to slide down snow slopes and learning how, when it's too risky to do it and when it's just right to do it, learning to control their behavior in the right way. Learning to play team sports, so you know your role in the team, is another way of self-regulation. But learning an individual sport as well, an individual activity, is also a very good way of learning self-regulation. Because all of these things involve planning your behavior, controlling your behavior, thinking a little bit ahead, etc. These are all very beneficial for the child. But some of these activities, like role-playing and group interactions, involve groups in a way which makes it difficult to do this purely in the home. And this is where early childhood education settings can be particularly beneficial. They can offer an increased range of opportunities for learning skills which are helpful in self-regulation over and above what happens in the home. And providing these opportunities does have really important long-term consequences. We found that self-regulation at the start of school is one of the most important predictors of their child's long-term development right through to adulthood.